To round out today's episode, Dr. Mizuho Nita is joining me next to talk specifically about the latest research on sour rot and new and alternative products for prevention and treatment of sour rot. My good friend Mizuho holds a PhD in plant pathology from Ohio State and is currently the assistant professor of plant pathology at Virginia Tech at the Ag Research and Extension Center in Winchester, Virginia, where I worked, back in 2005 and 6. Welcome, Mizuho. Thank you for joining me today.
All right. Thank you, Fritz, for the invitation. It's nice to be here. Once again, my name is Mizuho Nita. I'm a grape pathologist at the Virginia Tech. So I will talk about sour rot in a moment, but my research program expands beyond that. We work on the crown gall, viruses. We spent quite a bit of time in the past 10 years or so. And then also we are working on other tools that the grower can use. One of it is called grapeipm.org, which we're going to introduce this year as an official product. We're still working on the kinks, but this tool actually help you organize your spray program. And then it is free for now, so please take advantage of it. And then I will send the link to Fritz so that he can give it to you guys.
Great. We'll put that in the show notes. And at the end, I'll have you remind everyone where to find that too, Mizuho. You're always doing some great things. And yes, mostly free and available to the public, just like this podcast. So I admire that. So tell us a little bit about yourself, though. And you've heard a little bit about what you're working on. I know we're going to have you on again to tell us some of the results you're finding, and especially with crown gall and virus. But what about you? How long have you been in Virginia working as a pathologist for grapes, and what kinds of things do you focus on primarily with grapes?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So I've been here now 15 years. So it's a time flies. So I've been serving the state grape pathologist or extension pathologist for the state of Virginia, meaning that I do the handling the grape diseases issue with the growers in the Virginia. So once again, my research and extension program expand quite widely. Basically, I'm working on whatever I can see, and then if nobody else is working in the state, then I'll work on it at least to get understanding what's going on. And then sour rot, and then of course I would briefly talk about ripe rot too. But these are the two we have been focusing on the last couple of years.
Yeah. So biofungicides are kind of a buzzword right now. And so I'm really excited that you're working with some of these products as they relate to, either ripe rot or sour rot. And no one wants to spray conventional insecticides and other products right before harvest. Unfortunately, that's what we end up needing to do. So we're trying to look for products that have the softest footprint possible. I think that's why oxidate has been used, because it's a hydrogen peroxide. It really just evaporates, and it's got peracetic acid. So that's one of the reasons that's been used. What things have you been testing? And are there any results yet?
Yeah, so we've been testing in the last 2 years, basically a combination of Mustang Max as an insecticide or Entrust SC as an insecticide. So Entrust SC is the only certified, supposedly a softer material than the Mustang Max. And then for fungicides, we are testing Oxidate, also double nickel, Thea, which is the new material from AgBiome, which is the biological control agent, and Howler, and then the Switch, and then Capstan as well, like conventional partners.
Okay,
so these are the material we are testing.
Switch and Captan and Howler. And what were the other ones? There was
Thea, THEIA.
Okay.
So that's the new, I'm not sure it's hitting the market yet, but it's a new product coming up.
Okay. We'll be sure to either put that in the show notes or add a link to your website that shows what you're using. Okay.
Mm-hmm. All right. And then, so in a nutshell, what we found out is that before we go into that, I will talk about these biopesticides. So these biopesticides are basically alternative to conventional materials. And there are a few things you have to take it on with it. So one is it doesn't work as good as a conventional, unfortunately, simply because the way it works, it's basically trying to inhibit the growth of pathogen by doing a competition or changing the behavior of the pathogen or host. some of them actually activate host defense mechanism. The other one could be more like oil type material to basically film the surface of the plants, or maybe film the pathogen itself so that they will basically suffocate. So these are the basic modes of action that they have. And then because of that, you have to apply them before things happen. It almost always never works after the fact you see diseases. So that's something you have to keep in your mind. And sometimes you even have to prime it in a sense that the plants have enough time to get everything covered so that it's ready to go. So these are the things you have to remember.
Yeah, no, when you say that a biopesticide, there's two modes. There's either physical smothering or coverage of an oil. And then there's these other products that are basically stimulating the plant's own defense mechanisms. And I presume there's a time lapse that you need for that process to occur. So, and we also heard from Megan, once you see the disease, it's usually not very effective to spray afterwards, or at least you're not going to get prevention at that point. You've already got the problem. So what I'm hearing is you almost need to be even more ahead of the curve of the disease with these plant stimulant products. So what have we learned about these?
Indeed.
Other than that, they need to be applied early.
Yeah, indeed. And then actually, you made a really interesting point. Even for conventional, we've been testing out to see if the same principle applies or not. And then in 2 years in a row, if we spray the more systemic material a little bit earlier than I would think. For example, powdery mildew, we typically start spraying around bloom time, but we start doing a pre-bloom. Expensive material early, and it looks like it's working better than what we would expect. But anyway, I'm kind of sidetracking, but the same principle may apply to the conventional. And so far, going back to the original question, what we have been finding out is that the other thing, one more thing I should mention about this biopesticide is that once again, it doesn't work as good as a conventional, but at the same time, it works just fine if the disease pressure is low. I don't like the word disease pressure, but it basically means what I mean here is that maybe the amount of pathogen is low in the environment, or environment is not really conducive, or you have a nice cultivar which doesn't have a really high susceptibility to certain disease. If you have that kind of condition, these biopesticides tend to shine.
Right. They're moving just as fast as we can respond, these organisms, and which just is a good reminder that we are not in control of nature. And so the best we can do is observe and try to respond and be proactive. But how bad is ripe rot of an issue in Virginia relative to sour rot or botrytis or other bunch rot?
Yes, ripe rot used to be, when I joined the Virginia Tech 15 years ago, it was a known disease, but not a threat, meaning that we can find it every once in a while, maybe in the South, but it's not a major issue. However, in the last, I would say about 10 years or so, it became probably, one of the top 3 or 4 diseases in the Virginia. Number 1 right now for us is downy mildew. Second one, maybe powdery, depends on who you talk to. Yeah. And then third one, the fourth one will be ripe rot, and then maybe botrytis. So really? Unfortunately, it get really common to see. And then the worst case scenario I have seen is actually a few vineyards went out of business because they didn't know what's going on. They just keep losing the crop very end of the season. So by the time, as we discussed earlier, when you see diseases, it's too late. So you have to be proactive on this. And this is the one that we really have to be proactive.
Okay. Well, we talked about what to look for in the vineyard and in the clusters for sour rot. Maybe you could just really quickly, as we wrap up here, what would a grower look for symptoms of ripe rot? Because if they have that, they need to identify it to be preventative the next year. What would they look for?
Yeah, so what you're looking for is basically more like a sunburn. So it almost always start off the location you would imagine the sunburn to be. So top of the berries, and they become like a circular brown discoloration. It's just like a sunburn. The only difference is that with a sunburn, it will eventually sunken and getting darker. But with the ripe rot, it just remained brown, and then the shape of the berries remained almost the same until to the point that this brown region expand, and after that, it almost looks like a raisin. So that's the difference between black rot and the ripe rot. Black rot become really hard,
Black rot.
but the ripe rot it become like a raisin.
Blackberries.